Hi, welcome back, everybody. It's Dr. Jaydee Romick. Is posture really as important as you think it is? Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Dr. Jaydee Romick here with the George Fox Talks Body Edition. And I've got a very special guest today. We actually have Ryan Baugus on today. He's a doctor of physical therapy, owns his own company called Headquarters Physical Therapy, where they see anywhere from elite and professional athletes to everyday average people in the corporate wellness world. So today we're going to be talking about things that you can do if you are working a corporate job or some type of maybe labor-intensive job or not, and how you can optimize your health at work and doing things that that really honor your health and wellness while you can't exactly hit the gym, or maybe your professional job isn't to be an athlete. But welcome, Ryan. Super happy to have you.
I appreciate it.
I don't know if I hit everything. What else would you like us to know about you?
I was part of the first cohort to ever go through the PT program here, which was a huge honor. Changed my life. Incredible experience being here at George Fox. And that whole experience truly springboarded me to eventually, start my own company, Headquarters Physical Therapy, like you mentioned. It's interesting, like you mentioned, this wide spectrum of people that show up in my office. Or, you mentioned like this corporate wellness world where we're out in the community, trying to influence positive change in people's lives, at their job, at their office, on a construction job site, in a manufacturing area at a company. I mean, you name it. So it's just, it's kind of interesting to see this wide spectrum of people. And it's also interesting how the same health and wellness principles that, if we have a professional athlete in the office and we're thinking about things like nutrition, stress management, sleep, movement, strength conditioning. I mean, you name it across the board, this like spectrum of wellness, the principles that drive our practices for professional athletes are truly the exact same principles that we're bringing to people in a manufacturing job.
Right.
And it's just like the lens changes a little bit. You have to get to know the person you're interacting with, and you have to start to build a relationship and understand what's important to them, because it's probably different really for any individual we encounter. And then take that lens and then start to put these principles of health and wellness through the lens of that individual to make it something that's important to them. So,
wow. Because if you look at corporate wellness, I saw in Forbes 2020, the billions of dollars of healthcare or lost revenue from sick employees, whether it's mental health, physical health, or disability from injury, the amount that corporations spend on people's health after the fact is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money. So why not invest in people? And I would say that maybe it's within the last decade, people have really caught on to this idea of corporate wellness. Maybe we should take care of people before they get injured.
Yeah.
We had Kim Eppen on, and she talked about the best healthcare is self-care.
Yeah.
And if you're not taking care of yourself, it's really easy to kind of fall behind on these really basic things that keep you well and don't cost you financially.
Yeah.
So not only to the employer, but to the employee or whoever you're working for. If you're missing out on work, that's a huge part of your life. And some people, that paycheck is everything.
100%.
So I'm curious, how did that become such an inspiration for you guys to work in the corporate wellness sector? And what types of things do you touch on?
So interesting story about even just getting started in corporate wellness. So it literally fell into our lap. It was never something I started out with this like intention to do. But long story short, my dad works in construction, and he's an executive for a big construction company. And I had an event downtown, and it just so happened I called my dad and said, "Hey, can I stop by for lunch?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure, let's grab some lunch." So stopped by his office, and as dads do, he wanted to introduce me to his boss.
Yeah.
say, yeah, this is my son, Ryan, and he has a company and they work with professional athletes and they do nutrition and all this stuff. And his boss kind of looks at me and he goes, hey, have you ever thought about putting something like that together, but more for like employees of companies? And I was like, no, but that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
You know, so he's like, well, yeah, just maybe put together a proposal and like send it to me. And I was like, what's a proposal? I was like, I don't know how to do that.
Yep.
And so we went literally to the drawing board, to the whiteboard, and started just like piecing together like what in our eyes would be like an ideal wellness program based on the principles, just like I talked about, that we use every day in the clinic. What would that look like for, you know, an employee of a company? And that's really how it came to be. And you touched on, you know, some of the financial benefit for the companies. And it's interesting for us as we talk to different companies about why would they want to invest in a corporate wellness program, the reasons can be very different.
Yeah.
You might have a company who is really interested in like the dollars and cents, like, hey, how can this save us on absenteeism? How can this save us on medical costs, insurance costs, premiums, et cetera? How can we reduce injury risk or injury prevention and that sort of thing? And then you have these other companies who are really fun to work with who are like, hey, we just really love our people. We have a culture here where we take care of each other. And what can we do to enhance the quality of life for our employees? You know, like dollars and cents, don't really care so much about it. It's like, we just want to offer something cool for the employees, you know? So that's kind of the spectrum of people or like approaches that companies will take to corporate wellness. The things that we talk about, I mentioned already, right? Like stress management is a huge one.
Huge.
And it's funny because when you think stress management, you don't typically think physical therapy.
Yeah.
But it is funny, like even people that we see in the office, you know, who might be dealing with chronic pain, right? If they've been dealing with that for long periods of time and their autonomic nervous system, basically what's running all the background stuff, the stuff that you're not thinking about, but is just happening, everything from brainwave activity to hormones, to digestion, to pupil dilation and heart rate variability, and all these things are just going on in the background.
Yeah. If
we don't address stress management, you know, kind of reorienting their autonomic nervous system to be in a place where they're adaptable, we probably, like, no matter what we add to the equation, exercise-wise or hands-on manual therapy or whatever it is, it's probably not going to lead to a positive adaptation because they're not in a place physiologically where they can adapt, right? So we do tackle things like stress management from a PT standpoint. And then we also have people on staff that, you know, are mental health practitioners as well. So literal clinical psychologists. We have other companies that we work with who are very, like there's a group of realtors that we work with, and they're like they're winners. You know, they have to get out there and compete and win. Yeah. And so we have like a sports psychologist that we work with that works with them also, you know, so it's the stress management piece is really interesting. Sleep is a big one. We have nutritionists, dietitians on staff at HQ who work with people in the clinic, but then also put together programming for our corporate wellness side. All of our PTs have specific niches, and we build on those niches to develop events and programs. A cool one that we did recently is Danny, one of our PTs, is a certified bike fitter. Oh, awesome. And so I can probably say this. A Newburgh, big part of the community is ADEC, right? Yeah. ADEC Dental. Yep. So we do a lot of work with ADEC. They're a phenomenal company, just wonderful people. And I was walking around campus with one of their HR folks, and I noticed these employees walking out of one of the buildings and they're pushing their bikes. And I go, hey, do you have a lot of people that ride their bike around here? And he goes, oh yeah, we have a huge cycling population, you know, because it's like out in wine country and people cycle around. So I was like, hey, we should put together an event where Danny, one of our amazing PTs, comes out and does bike fitting. Yeah. We had like 100 people sign up. That's amazing. And so the cool thing about that is, once again, You're empowering people to continue on their health and wellness and fitness journey by giving them a great bike fit.
Yeah.
And then they're able to ride their bike more comfortably, limit injuries on the bike. So that's like just a good example of how we might put an event together.
No, I love that. And it makes me just think about, what are some of the biggest concerns, or, not every company has a bike community that gets out and is active, but what are some of the most common things that you see in the corporate wellness sector? Maybe it is the stress management, but in terms of movement, in terms of biggest complaints, like what are some things that you commonly see at these companies that maybe everyday people would also have issues with?
Absolutely. So a big one, that gets brought up a lot when we ask, companies or we do surveys and things like that. Hey, what should we talk about? How should we build our programming? Like injury risk reduction, neck pain, back pain, repetitive jobs, even people who are sitting at desks for hours a day on the computer. Work from home population is another huge one. Because, since COVID, this is a huge thing, right?
Yeah.
So we do talk a lot about posture, positions, neck pain, back pain, and how people can sort of, you mentioned self-care, right? Everything we do on the corporate wellness side is education-based. Like we're trying to give people the background knowledge, empower them to be able to take the locus of control and kind of not feel reliant on other people, but be like, hey, I've got the knowledge to kind of take care of this on my own. That's really what it comes down to. So those would be big ones.
Yeah. So, we always do a lot of top tips, but we were chatting before we started recording about, you just had a presentation the other day talking about neck pain, back pain, some of the biggest causes for either injury or maybe just day-to-day aggravation where people are just like, my neck has been killing me for months and I can't get it to stop. Some of it's stress related. I will say, even in my experience, having people come in, they're wearing their shoulders like earrings and they don't understand why they have neck pain. So what are some of those tips that you had or that you were sharing the other day with this presentation that you had?
If I don't get there, remind me to come back to the stress thing.
Yes. Okay.
So when we talk about neck pain, back pain, especially it's related to like postures and positions. Kind of the old school of thought is that, if you have perfect posture, you will prevent pain.
Yeah.
And that's something that, we can say pretty confidently is probably not the case.
Right.
Probably has a lot more to do with dosage. And so just to expand on dosage, right?
What does that mean?
A lot of times I'll put up a picture of, have you ever heard of like, I know you have, but like text neck?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
People, you see these pictures where like people are in this texting position, their neck's all hunched over. And I'll put this picture up of this person texting, right? And I'll say, hey, is this a good or a bad position? And every time everybody's like, it's a bad position. Like that's going to mess up your discs and your neck strains and all sorts of stuff. And then right next to it, I'll be like, okay, I kind of trap the people.
Okay.
Like a little trick. Put up a picture of Usain Bolt, fastest person to ever walk the face of the earth. 100-meter world record holder, and coming out of the starting blocks. And he's in this like text neck position, right?
Yeah, totally.
And so the neck position looks almost exactly the same.
Right.
And I'll say, is this a bad position? People will be like, no. And I'll be like, okay, so what's the difference? And people always get it. They're like, it's the time spent there, right?
Right.
So I'm like, yes, absolutely. Like the dosage is the time spent or the intensity or the number of reps or whatever it is, right? Where that position in and of itself isn't bad or good. It just is. Like you should be able to flex your neck and extend your neck. Like we're made to do that. That's good. But it has everything to do with the dosage of that position. Once again, with neck pain, I could probably, like if somebody came to me and was like, I want to set the world record, be the best text necker in the world. Be like, I want to hold this position for 24 hours and feel good. Be like, okay, cool. weird goal, but okay. Like
weird goal.
Let's start with sets of 20 minutes. Like what can you tolerate? Well, at baseline, I can tolerate 20 minutes in this position. Okay, so let's do 3 sets of 20 minutes. Like I'm kind of being facetious, right?
Yeah.
But like dosing stress ultimately leads to building capacity to tolerate, more time spent in that position or more intensity. Right. Same concept applies. I can round my back to bend over and tie my shoes and I'm fine. But if I round my back to pick up a 300-pound barbell, like the intensity is high enough to where that's probably going to be bothersome.
Right.
Could I train myself to pick up a heavy barbell with a rounded back?
Right.
Yeah, I could. Yeah. Right. But it's all about dosage and building capacity. Right. Can I keep riffing?
Absolutely. I would love it.
So when it comes to capacity building, something that's, remember this idea of capacity building, there's a dosage that you're going to adapt positively to, and then there's a dosage that you could potentially adapt negatively to, right?
Okay.
So how do you build capacity and kind of control your own dosage to allow yourself to adapt positively? The concept of RPE helps people a lot with this. RPE means rate of perceived exertion. Yep. Or your rating of your perceived exertion. So basically, I'll just keep it simple with people and use like a 0 to 10 scale.
Right.
And say, hey, let's say we're in the clinic doing a physical therapy drill. I'll say, how challenging is this on a 0 to 10 scale? 10 is like the hardest thing you've ever done. You're climbing Mount Everest, knocking on death's doorstep, right?
Yeah.
Hardest thing in the world. 0 is like you're just chilling, sitting on your couch, and let people kind of rate how difficult something is on that 0 to 10 scale. And typically, there's a lot of research that shows training at a 6 out of 10 is very beneficial for strength building. And then in my world, what I kind of mentioned, that idea of capacity building, right? Where you're dosing yourself. So you do not absolutely have to train to failure, be at a 10 out of 10 all the time when you're stressing your body. But working at like a comfortable 6 out of 10 level can help people kind of dose out or figure out, hey, like what's appropriate for me to be in this idea of dosing the stress appropriately to build capacity. Yeah. The other side of that coin is if on any given day, let's just take something really simple like a squat, right? If let's say you're doing squats and you're holding a 20-pound weight and you're saying that's a 6 out of 10 on Monday. And then let's say Tuesday, you get really bad sleep. Wednesday, very stressful at work. And you go back and you go to lift that 20-pound weight again on Thursday, let's say. Yeah. And you're like, oh my gosh, 20 pounds is like a 9 out of 10 today. Yeah. No problem. Drop the weight a little bit and kind of find that 6. And then on any given day, it kind of allows you to be in control of that training stimulus, right? Yeah. So, as you're working on kind of building capacity to tolerate challenging positions, whether it's sitting at your desk or whether it's, a repetitive job in manufacturing on a construction site or whatever it is, you kind of have control where you're like, okay, I can manage this, or work to build more capacity to tolerate more stress, which then leads to decreased sensitivity of neck tissue, back, etc.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So for someone who might be listening that has neck pain, back pain, maybe they have a more sedentary job where they're not doing something that requires much muscle involvement. Well, I guess it's all relative. Sitting for a long time can require a lot of different muscle involvement. Yep. So for someone who sits 12 to 14 hours a day, maybe they're at home, maybe they're at work, but they get relatively little movement throughout their day. What are some tips there?
So I touched on, there are basically 3 concepts that I would like really hammer home with this. Dosage and capacity building, we kind of touched on already. Yep. Movement variability would probably be the 3rd. And I know this is going to sound ridiculously simple, but it is the most beneficial thing. Once again, rather than like saying, okay, sit in perfect posture for 12 hours a day at your computer, which once again, even just sitting with perfect posture for 12 hours, you'll probably develop some sensitivity to your perfect posture position, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I like to talk about this idea of movement variability where not from like a neuroscience standpoint, but more like from a day-to-day, like everyday person standpoint, is this notion of, if you notice that, after 30 minutes of sitting, your neck starts to tighten up or becomes painful, or same thing with your back. Dosage, set a timer, right? Add in a little movement variability, and it can be as simple as a walk or just standing up. Like, sure, I'll prescribe specific drills for people to do.
Yeah.
But, if I haven't evaluated you, if I don't know you, just in general, just going for like a little walk. If you're work from home, go a little walk around your house. Get up, go fill your water bottle or whatever if you're in the office, and come back. If you are constantly in this kind of like computer position, stand up, stretch out, like get out of that position, even just briefly.
Yeah.
So that's dosage. You're adding in some variability into your day-to-day routine. And then if you want to throw capacity building into that equation for the desk type workers, maybe you start for a couple weeks at that 20-minute timer. And you're like, actually, you know what? I've got like 30 minutes now and I actually feel pretty good. Yeah. You're starting to build a little capacity, right? So you're dosing out whatever your current capacity is. Yeah. You're dosing out a little bit more and a little bit more. And eventually, ideally, you wouldn't need to take those breaks, but you still do it because you're like, no, it's good to get up and move, change position. I will tell you that is so much more effective than me as a physical therapist kind of creating all these biomechanical issues and saying like, hey, your, C5 vertebrae doesn't move 3 degrees to the left. I'm so much more interested in being like, okay, this person has differences, uniqueness about them and how they move and how their body's put together and their anthropometrics and all that. And great, like, let's just build capacity with what, like, the uniqueness that you're bringing to the table. Yeah. Right.
I'll throw in there.
Yeah.
Let me know what you think of this.
Please do.
So sometimes I'll tell people because they get up and walk or they stand or they have a stand-up desk and they're still in relatively the same posture with their upper body, say they have neck or back pain. Sometimes I'll even take people out of that and have them lie on the ground, completely unweight their head, completely unweight their back. Maybe they do some thoracic rotations or thoracic, meaning mid-back rotations or extensions on the floor. And that actually helps reduce some of that pain, kind of labeling it as a micro break or taking, maybe lessening that, that repetitive strain and that kind of that chronic position because they don't have the capacity to quite stay in that position for 2 hours. I don't know what you think about that.
I love it. I mean, the micro breaks, it can be like, this is where people miss the boat sometimes, is like, they feel like they have to have this like specific, this one drill is like, and it's like Instagram stuff, right?
Oh yeah,
it's like,
totally.
This one drill will change your life with neck and back pain. Right. And I will tell you, like, something as general as just laying down, just like you said, on the ground is great. Taking a walk, moving your neck from side to side, if you're always in this forward position, just kind of opening up. And just to reiterate, those aren't bad positions, right? There's no good or bad when it comes to positions. Like, it's what do you have the capacity for? What can you tolerate at any given time? And that's ultimately, the name of the game with repetitive postures, repetitive work environment, et cetera.
You said to come back to stress.
Yeah. Okay. So one thing that's really interesting, we, and Jaydee, I'm sure you in the clinic will get this from time to time, is like people will come in and they'll be like, I carry my stress in my neck, and they're like, have this tension and tightness. And for the longest time, like, I didn't really know what to do with that. You know what I mean? It's really interesting. We're starting to find, going back to the autonomic nervous system, you have kind of like your sympathetic stress, fight or flight side of your autonomic nervous system. And then you've got your parasympathetic like rest, recovery, restorative side. And we're always kind of on this spectrum at any given time, right? And it can change really quickly. Yeah. Like if you are driving along and someone stops short in front of you. That ever happened to you?
Oh, yeah.
And you slam on your brakes and immediately you're not thinking about it.
Right.
But the heart rate goes crazy.
Yep.
You're white knuckling the steering wheel.
Yep.
All that tension increases. Your pupils dilate. You get the cold sweat. You get that like butterfly epinephrine shot, you know. And it's this huge physiological cascade that occurs without you even thinking about it because of that like threat of danger of running into the person in front of you, right?
Right.
You're like, oh my gosh, that was crazy. You know, that's an example of a big shift toward that stress side of the spectrum. But we're starting to understand, like, you know, you white knuckle and the tension increases. There's evidence for sympathetic side of that nervous system innervation to skeletal muscle tissue. And what I mean by that is that stress absolutely plays a part in muscle tension that you might feel on a day-to-day basis. And then you can develop kind of a baseline where you're in that like stress tension position.
Yeah.
So something as simple as, once again, so if it's not a muscle tissue issue where you're like, my muscles are mechanically shortened.
Right.
It's more like this stress response is just kind of driving
it's subconscious.
that subconscious, call it overactivity maybe, or like guarding response or tone. We probably don't want to focus too hard on like changing the mechanical tissue or like changing the tissue structure so much.
Yeah.
But if we play with the brain and we can get that stress response to calm down, a lot of times people will say, oh, wow, I can like feel that tension releasing. Right. So something super simple like a breathing drill.
Yeah.
If you stimulate your diaphragm with a, you know, targeted breathing drill, you'd be shocked how many people just through breathing can reduce tension in the neck, the low back. And just to keep it really practical, like with breathing, if you're trying to stimulate your diaphragm, which is innervated by your vagus nerve, which talks to your brain, predominant nerves in the like neurons in the vagus nerve are from the diaphragm to the brain. So they're talking to the brain, giving you information. If you can do like a breath in where you're pushing your belly button away from the spine, flattening out the diaphragm and just kind of stimulating your diaphragm muscle, it's a good signal from the diaphragm to the brain to downshift on that stress spectrum, which then can lead to reduction in muscle tension, et cetera. So in fact, I don't at all tell people to like stretch out their neck muscles. Right. I'm like, let's play with the brain and kind of see if we can get that stress response to reduce through some targeted breathing. Yeah. And it can be 1 to 2 minutes of breathing, and you might notice a big reduction in tension.
That's great. We just had Kim Eppen on, and she talked about square breathing or box breathing that the Navy SEALs do. Yep. She took us through a drill of that, but I like even the simplicity of feeling your belly come out, because that is telling us that our diaphragm is contracting and it is moving down. So we're actually massaging, if you want to call it, that nerve and causing those muscles to chill out just a little bit.
Any breathing, like there are so many different breathing styles out there. Yeah. As long as you are flattening the diaphragm by pushing the belly button away from the spine and then pulling the belly button back in toward the spine, getting that diaphragm to come back up, flatten out, come back up, and kind of going slow with it. Yeah. That's the stimulation that ultimately leads to the stress reducing response. Right.
So, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Because if you can think about holding your breath all day or having this mechanical stress, meaning, you know, the muscles tightening, but as a response to that nervous system, if you can imagine being in that all day long, over time, that will cause this kind of sensitivity to rise up, or this kind of subconscious irritation that your pain may not be in your head, but you're not maybe aware of this like low level of stress that ends up raising, and that creates all this muscle and body tension. That's amazing.
I mean, if you're just living in that stress response, which many people are, we would call it like sympathetic overreaching. Okay. Where you just kind of at baseline are shifted toward that stress side of the spectrum. Yeah. It's going to amplify sensitivity. It's going to amplify tension. Yeah. It's going to make you more emotionally labile, reactive.
That makes a lot of sense.
There's all sorts of negative responses that can happen when you're chronically shifted that way.
That makes a lot of sense. So I know we've already talked about some tips, and usually during these episodes, we're going a little bit over on time, but usually we kind of pull in these kind of like top 3 takeaways. Are there 3 takeaways that people can introduce in their day-to-day? Maybe it's the neck and back pain reduction, maybe it's the stress, but are there 3 that you can summarize that you say, these 3 big things will help make your day at work or your wellness at work so much better?
3 things.
You can go rogue and say, I want top 1 or top 5. Doesn't
3
matter.
things is good. So I'll give one very big picture.
Okay.
And this is really important to me, and I know to you, Jaydee, and really kind of the whole George Fox PT community, my company, HQ as a whole, is you should be working with people or like if you're interacting with like a clinician, a PT, a doctor, whatever it might be, you should always be in a position where you are taking the locus of control. You're empowered to take control of your own situation.
Yes.
Not be in a position of reliance on somebody else, right?
Yes.
And so that's just a big picture where, you know, as you as a person who's evaluating all of this crazy health and wellness info that we get on Instagram, in the grocery store, on the magazine covers.
Yep.
Just as a general litmus test, like if that's not information that's leading you to be more in control of your own situation, it's probably not great info.
Yeah.
So just as a little litmus test there. Number 2 would be probably just the idea of like dosage and movement variability, not being fearful of movement. You know, that's another big thing that we see quite often is just there's a lot of fear mongering that goes on with, you know, like flexing your spine or extending your spine or don't do this exercise or don't bend forward or don't extend or all of this kind of negative language. But just remember, you're totally able to do that stuff. And you might not be able to today. You know, if you have an injury or, you know, some sort of issue that's stopping you from doing something, that's okay.
Yeah.
But you absolutely have the adaptability to build capacity to work toward whatever version of bending your spine or picking up a weight or squatting or running or whatever it is. That. You have the adaptability. Right. You know, people say running is bad for your knees. Running's not bad for your knees. Running can actually, from a research-based standpoint, can be great for your knees as long as it's dosed appropriately. Right. Same thing with squatting. Same thing with deadlifting. Deadlifting can be great for your back as long as it's dosed appropriately. Right. So just keeping that in mind, like we're very adaptable. Right. Dosage, capacity building, that all plays a big role in it. And then this is my 3rd one. Okay. This is totally on the fly right here, but have fun with your health and wellness and fitness. This is something that's just been on my heart recently is like so much of it seems like so serious all the time. You know, it's like, once again, going back to the fear mongering thing, it's like, don't do this. It's bad for you. Don't do that. It's like, no, like find something that you enjoy. Try a bunch of different things. Yeah. Go to that fitness class, you know, that you might be putting off because you're like, I don't want to look stupid or whatever. It's like, give it a try. Right. If, you know, you're like, hey, I want to start running and I don't know what to do, you know, find someone that can help you out and don't be afraid to have fun with fitness. Do stuff that sparks your interest. Right. Try things that push you out of your comfort zone. I will tell you some of the most rewarding stories that I've heard with patients, corporate wellness, et cetera, is when people are nervous to try something and then they try it and they're like, oh my gosh, this is like my identity now. Totally. You know what I mean? Yeah. So
pickleball is a great example. People are
get after it.
All about pickleball.
Go play some pickleball.
I love it.
Try different things. Have fun with it. Don't take yourself too seriously. It can be such an enriching thing for your life to just try new things and don't be afraid to look like an idiot from time to time.
I love that.
That's all right.
I love that.
It's part of the journey.
And even grab someone at work, grab a friend at work.
Yes.
Get a bike club going. Whatever it is that you like, I think employers should be allowing the time for play and for movement as well. So anyway, well, I appreciate your time, Ryan. This was such a fun conversation. And I know the people that are listening are the ones that are meant to hear it. And just want to encourage everybody to heed Brian's advice and move forward with something that you enjoy and get yourself healthy. So thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for being
Jaydee.
here. Appreciate it.
Of course.
This video podcast is a production of George Fox Digital. To find more material like this, you can subscribe to George Fox Talks on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you listen to podcasts. Our team really appreciates your feedback in the form of likes, comments, and reviews, and we'd really love to hear what you think. To sign up for our weekly email list and to keep up to date with the latest episodes and publications, you can check us out on the web at georgefox.edu/talks. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.